Well, joining me now to have a further look at today's papers is Alex Petropoulos, political commentator with Young Voices UK. Good morning, Alex.
Good morning, James.
Let's begin with Sue Gray and her departure from Downing Street. Did she need to go?
You know, it looks like some people on the inside believed she needed to go. And at a certain point, if people within your team are saying this, if people within your team are saying, it's impossible for me to continue, I think that she has to go, then you do have to make a decision as a leader. However, I do think that decision is the wrong one, in the sense that this is a prioritization from some within government of better communications, a prioritization of controlling the narrative versus controlling delivery. And this almost obsession with what are the media talking about? What are all these stories coming out? We saw lots of citation of these sort of stories about scandals, about Labour ministers and the Prime Minister getting donations and all these different ways that they'd been taking like hundreds of pounds, not massive amounts, but it really dominated media cycle after media cycle. And for me, this is just really disappointing because we were almost promised a government that would be focused on delivery and not focused on the media, not focused on sort of communications. And this reshuffle seems to be hinting at a change in direction there.
I mean, do you think almost Sue Gray has been made a bit of a scapegoat for the government's problems? I mean, they've been in power for about 3 months. It's been a pretty rocky 3 months. You mention some of the difficulties they have had. And yes, the team in Downing Street is important, but ultimately the buck stops with the Prime Minister. Has Sue Gray been made a scapegoat?
So the buck does stop with the Prime Minister, but I think we have to remember that the Prime Minister needs his team working for him. It needs his team operating functionally because there's just too much to do as a single individual. So I do think that you could say that she's been made a bit of a scapegoat, but if Morgan McSweeney thinks that she needs to go in order for him to do his job, then there is that sort of dysfunctional dynamic within Downing Street. Now, I do think you can take a slightly more positive spin on this. You can say, actually, well, she's been demoted, but she's been demoted to this regional envoy to regions and developed countries. It's this weird title that I had to look at again because I don't think anyone's really paid attention to this before. But maybe this does actually signal a shift in focus from Starmer's government to saying, actually, the scale of the problems we're facing in this country are so big that we actually have to involve the devolved regions more. We have to devolve power away from central government, and we have to shift that power towards the mayors, towards the devolved governments, and get them involved in helping us solve the problems together. And in that role, Sue Gray will be very well placed to enable that shift of power and to enable getting things done, which was always her job at the end of it. It wasn't the politics, it was getting things done.
That's, if I may say, I think that's probably quite a generous interpretation, Alex. I mean, I think to a lot of people, this looks like a bit of a non-job she's been given just to move her out the door, isn't it?
Definitely in that sense. And she was pushed out. Morgan McSweeney has been given a lot more power. The political commentator sort of side of Whitehall, the journalist, the media side of Whitehall has sort of claimed power that they sort of lost at the beginning of Starmer's government. But this is a government that has, within the UK even, regional government has more power than it has had in 50 plus years. Regional government is now completely, bar a couple mayors, or one mayor even in England, completely Labour dominated. This is the perfect condition for a Labour government to say, actually, you know what, we've got too many problems. We need you guys to help us out. And a sort of Sue Gray acting as this channel, this conduit of information between central government and all the different regional heads of government, relaying all their pain points, relaying all their problems back up to the Prime Minister. If you were to give her a role that allowed her to actually still wield some semblance of control, still wield some say about how things are happening and make sure that she can get things done, this would be a sensible role for that.
Well, let's come on to one of the big policy dilemmas facing the government. And the Times reports that education unions have joined forces with private schools to urge the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, to delay new laws imposing VAT on private school fees, warning that the current deadline will lead to job losses. Ministers insisted yesterday they will push ahead with their plans to charge 20% VAT on private school fees from the 1st of January. This has been a controversial policy, Alex, but obviously the government so far sticking to their guns. Do you think there is some sense of just looking at this again, if not at the entire ethos of the policy, then just at the specifics? I mean, does it have to be introduced midway through the school year, for instance?
You're very right that this has been a controversial policy. And, I think you've got to almost I think that takes away any sort of question about whether schools knew this was coming, didn't know this was coming. We all knew this was coming. We've been discussing it for months. And I'll go back to what I said before, which is that there are lots of really big problems facing the country, and the government has to make some really hard decisions. And to be honest, I would criticize them for not making hard enough decisions so far, for not acting extremely enough, and for not, being willing to bite those political bullets early on and then reap the rewards 3-4 years down the line. And so them sticking to their guns with this one is something that I'll give them credit for there. I think you can go a lot further. I think that the unions and schools are, they're just trying to find something out of nothing. They've known this has been coming for ages. We've known since July, pretty much, and the rules are going to come into effect on January 1st. And so I don't think there's that much they've got going for them when they sort of say, guys, give us a bit more time. We've got to take action sooner.
It's interesting you say, Alex, that you think the government could go further when it comes to taking potentially some quite unpopular decisions, but necessary decisions. What kind of things do you have in mind?
So, the biggest decision, I think, would be a reform of the planning system. They've said they want to do it. It's just, is that scale of ambition high enough? Are they willing to really make the sweeping changes that will be necessary to enable infrastructure construction, to enable house construction? I think they need to be more ambitious with housing targets. They lowered housing targets in London, in the city where the need for housing is greatest, where housing costs have spiraled so far out of control. You could be more ambitious there. But even on taxation, VAT for private schools, good, get rid of it. They could also be looking at an equalization of the VAT rate across the board. They could be saying, you know what, maybe we shouldn't have all of these exemptions for biscuits, for cakes, and we have to get in all these arguments about what does get an exemption, what doesn't get an exemption. We could just set VAT the same for everyone. There are lots of different battles, and they will receive pushback on everything. But at the end of the day, they've only really got 4 more years out of a 5-year, 4.5-year term to get things working in the country again. And we can agree, I think, that things aren't working so far. So they've got to be a bit decisive and, ignore the short-term media problems, media trouble commentary, and see the bigger picture.
Just finally, Alex, want to get your thoughts on another story in the papers today. It's in the Times this morning. New research suggests young people are more likely to make friends at the gym than in pubs and clubs. 37% said they viewed exercising as a way to socialise, and 42% said they had made friends while keeping fit. Now, I'll be honest with you, Alex, I have never, ever made friends with someone in the gym, because when I go to the gym, I just want to keep my headphones in and quietly get on with my exercise. Have you ever made friends at the gym?
I don't think I've made friends at the gym, but I have gone to the gym with friends. And, I'm a bit of a serial procrastinator. And so my friends have actually been quite important in keeping me accountable and making sure, Alex, hey, you haven't been to the gym in like a week and a half. You want to come with me? Would you like to go together? I think this shift towards more exercise is something that I've seen quite widely, and I think it is easier than ever to go to the gym. I recently started working out again, and I sort of ask ChatGPT, like, how do I do this exercise? How do I do that exercise? And I get to go to the gym before actually going to the gym, if that makes sense.
Hang on, you use ChatGPT before your workouts?
Yeah. I'll say, like, I'm going to focus on my chest today. How would you recommend which exercises should I do for my chest? And then it'll be like, hi, Alex, do this exercise, do that exercise. I'm like, okay, but I don't know how to do that exercise. How do I do it? Which way should my hands be facing? I always have these really silly questions exercise that I don't want to ask anyone in person.
I have heard many different uses for ChatGPT. I have never heard that one, but that's remarkable. Alex, always great to chat. Thank you so much for your time.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Alex Petropoulos there, political commentator with Young Voices UK. I think I'm doing exercise wrong. Clearly I need to use AI. Good morning. This is